So my name's DeMarcus Allen. Let's see. Graduated from SMU 2016. And yeah, I was a part of the Black at SMU movement when I was on campus. So at least towards the end of my SMU career. So that was primarily my senior year. My first two, came in as a freshman, fall 2012. My very first experience, and maybe this is the best way to start the interview.
I was going to start talking about where you went to high school and stuff.
Oh man, okay, yeah, we can drive that too.
But no, finish your point.
Yeah. Well, I'll hold that until later. So
you grew up in Round Rock.
Round Rock,
Austin,
Texas.
Right?
Yeah. Yep, about 20 minutes north. I did. Yeah, Round Rock was great.
It
was
good
great.
Community.
Yeah, it was much.
Suburban.
Yeah, it was much different than growing up in Austin. So I was born in Austin, and the first, probably 12 years of my life, I'd say 12, 13 years. I was in Austin, so I went to Austin public schools. I went to an Austin preschool at a Baptist church at the time.
I went to a Baptist preschool.
Boom, there it is. Went to preschool, and then after that, kindergarten all the way through about 6th grade, I went to public school in Austin. Mother got a better job in Round Rock, so we ended up moving to Round Rock. My 7th grade all the way through 12th grade, went to school in Round Rock.
Cool.
So,
yeah. How is it different from Austin?
I think demographically, it was a lot fewer Black people in, at least in that part of Round Rock, compared to the part of Austin that I lived in. So I grew up in East Austin, which I think at that time was more heavily Black, Latino, and suburbia. And again, this is Round Rock, like 2010, before then. So I was the class that every year, my age sort of matched my grade year. So 2007 was 2007 up until 2012 was my time at Round Rock, and it was Round Rock at the time was still growing, but very much so very white.
Did that influence your ideas about race, your own identity, or
no? It wasn't even it hadn't really crossed my mind at that point. It really hadn't. It wasn't. I think had I been more sort of aware of it, I mean, maybe it may have affected me one way or the other. But yeah, at that time, it didn't. Kind of went in one ear and out the other. I think a large part of that as well is because I was so heavily involved in church. My grandfather's a pastor, so I mean, literally, I was at church every day, right? Like every day of the week. So,
so did you say that was kind of a sheltering experience, or just like an insular thing?
Kind of, sort of, but not really. It was. I think it was a little bit of both. Where I think I had so much going on, it was really hard to focus. It would have been really difficult to focus on, just one aspect of my experience. Where I would have been able to see the like those clear, distinct lines between, oh man, this is racial bias, this is racial insensitivity, this is bigotry, this is discrimination. There's just so much going on between school, church, athletics, and I'm 7th grader, 8th grader, all the way up. I didn't see those clear dividing lines until I got to SMU.
Yeah, that's my next question.
Yeah.
Sweet. What changed SMU? How is SMU different?
Man. To understand SMU is to sort of understand Dallas. And for me, well, I think for everybody, they, looking at where I'm from, right? From Austin, the greater Austin area where Round Rock is sort of considered to be a part of. Austin is a liberal city, right? So
People's Republic of Austin. Yeah.
Right. Is that what they call it now? Is it? So ideologically, I think there are a lot of changes, right? There's a pretty significant rift between what Austin believes, what Austin accepts, versus what Dallas believes, what Dallas accepts.
Like what? Can you give an example?
Everything from, I would say governmentally, that is the capital city. obviously, but I think there are some things that are more socially acceptable. When we look at the LGBT community,
Yeah, definitely.
I think there's that aspect of community, that aspect of society.
Does any like one incident stand out to you, or one thing, or one person?
No, there's not. There's not. There's really not. Again, it probably through conversations that I maybe overheard, or what I've seen on the news, or what people tell me, from back home. It's like, man, things are changing, So yeah, I just think, just ideologically, there are some things, that sort of, they create a dividing line between Austin and the way Austin is, and Dallas and the way Dallas is.
Yeah, definitely.
You can attribute that to society. You can attribute that to
Culture, right?
I mean, culture overall, right? You can attribute that to, I mean, heck, even the population in terms of like numbers wise, right? I mean, Dallas
demography.
Dallas is huge, right, compared to Austin. So, so I think there's, in order to understand SMU, you kind of have to understand, right, Dallas, and understand that Dallas is different from Austin, like much different, along the lines of, again, what's accepted, and even just, I think, the history of Dallas. So that's one thing that I'm still to this day sort of unpacking, that I'm learning about. And one of those things is that, like, Dallas has a very racialized history.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. So, and to understand that Dallas has a racialized history, I think one can assume, right, that SMU, as SMU claims to be Dallas's school, Dallas's university, one can assume that that SMU also has a racialized history, which is factual. For me, right, my first sort of coming into SMU, where I learned that SMU was different, which again, because I wasn't from Dallas, I'm just like, okay, well, Dallas is also different. I never had an experience in Austin where I didn't feel like I belonged, didn't feel like, I was supposed to be here.
When did you first feel that Dallas, how did Dallas express its unwelcome? That was a horribly worded sentence. No. That's a good question.
I would say, so I'll answer that, but I'll start with just some of my general observations when I first moved to Dallas. I remember heading up to 45, with my family, driving me up from Austin, from Round Rock. We're on 45, headed north. And then we cross over, and at the time I didn't know the difference between 45, 30, 75, all these 635 loops and all this good stuff. But we're driving from 45 headed north, and then we get to 75. I'm like, okay, cool. But before we get to 75, I'm like, man, okay, cool. This is Dallas, right? This is great, right? I'm just looking around and I see the skyline, and before we actually get to the skyline, as you're driving north 45, you just see like a bunch of, almost looks like a third world country. It's like kind of ridiculous. Like, wow, okay, we're not in Dallas. I'm just like, man, we couldn't be in Dallas yet, right? Because I'm expecting this huge like city,
metropolis,
right? And we get to SMU, and I'm like, okay, this is Dallas. All right, this is Dallas. And that was sort of my first, once I realized, actually, when you were down on 45, like that was Dallas too. So very quickly, I think I realized, okay, something's weird about this place, where there's such a dividing line between north of 30 and south of 30. I'm like, that's strange to me. So I start there just as a general observation, and then I get on campus, and I remember my first experience. You probably won't remember this. You're a new student or newer student.
Just a child.
Yeah. So my very first experience where I didn't feel quite welcome. I was a freshman. I moved into Moore Hall, which is in the God Quad, and was with a group of students. First time being here, had no idea what SMU was about, but like, hey, what do we do? It's first night. Everybody's, we're moved in, not quite unpacked, but moved in. What do we do, right? And it's myself and a group of maybe 6 or 7 other people. I'm the only black person in the group. and we make our way from Moore Hall to basically Blanton, the big fountain, right? And at the time, you could, if you were driving up along SMU Boulevard, and you have the fraternity houses to your right, intramural fields to your left, there was a time where you could park. There were parking spaces in front of the fraternity houses. So you could park there, and generally what would happen is, fraternities, they would call, because Uber and Lyft weren't a thing either. Right. So you would call a taxi or a cab. Too, yeah. Right. Yeah. And you would, they would call those taxis, cabs. Hey, you need rides from campus to the venue, wherever the party was. So with this group, we walked from Moore Hall to Blanton, and we're on the corner we're right in front of the fountains. And before we cross the street, right, we're just sort of looking over, and it's like, man, that's just madness, right? You just see people like running everywhere, coming in and out of frat houses, getting in the cabs, and then making the U-turn, headed down SMU Boulevard to go to wherever the venue is for the party. Yeah. And we're watching this as first-year students, right? Like, man, okay, this is crazy, right? And we're like, all right, guys, so we got here together, right? We're going to go together. And when we cross the street, even though there's a bunch of madness over there, going to stick together. So that was the pact. Stay with your corral friends. Right, so that was the pact. And we crossed the street, and something interesting happened. Again, I'm the only black kid in the group.
What did that feel like?
At that time, it was just, I was aware. It's like, oh, I'm the only black kid in the group, right? Yeah. But SMU hadn't really smacked me up just yet, so I didn't think much of it. I'm like, all right, cool. I mean, I'm aware. It's just me, right? No big deal. I'm good. So we crossed the street, and something interesting happened. All of the fraternity members at the time who were, sort of inviting people to get in the cabs and go, it's like, well, all of my friends were getting invited to cabs, but I wasn't. I'm just like, oh man, okay. So, and all my friends at that point, they just sort of ran off in different directions. And I'm like, all right, well, so much for the pact, right? For the blood oath. So, but in that moment, I remember, I'm like, oh man, okay, this is interesting. I wasn't so much concerned with my friends leaving me behind. I knew I'd see them later, but it was just the environment and that sense of sort of being on an island in the middle of a bunch of people.
As you were left out, it must have felt abandoned.
Yeah. So it was a very interesting moment. I never got invited into a van. I never got invited into a fraternity house.
That's horrible.
Yeah, no, and it really wasn't. It wasn't a feeling of.
That's like the definition of discrimination.
It wasn't a feeling of despair or sadness. It was just more of a. This is probably how it's going to be. So that
must have sucked. Would you say you were like disillusioned because of it?
No. It did something to me, and I think, and this is what we talked about yesterday on the phone. But so I got deferred twice before I got into SMU. So when I got there, it was already a part of me that was kind of had a chip on my shoulder, because when I got deferred, I thought to myself, oh man, okay. And I didn't know what deferred meant at the time, right? But at the time, what I summed it up to was, oh, they want somebody better. And I thought I was pretty good. And I made good grades. I was well-rounded. I thought I was pretty good. Yeah. So the fact that they deferred me not once but twice sort of led me to believe at the time, oh, they're it wasn't a no. It was like a not yet. We're going to hold out and see if we can get someone better. So when they did let me in, I kind of had a chip on my shoulder. So to go from that experience and feeling like SMU kind of took a chance on me to being, in a student environment where I felt ignored and sort of unwelcomed and didn't feel like I belonged. Yeah. Put those two things together and you kind of light a fire in me, and I'm just like, all right, we're gonna make some changes, right? Yeah. I made it at that point, and I didn't declare it. I didn't like scream it out to the world, but there was something internally that sort of shifted, that transformed in me, and I was like, all right, this is gonna change. I don't ever want to feel like that again, and I don't want anybody who comes after me to feel like that ever again. That shouldn't be the case, right? Because my parents know good and well, right? They pay just as much money as any other person.
And you work just as hard to be here. Yeah.
Right. So that was my first experience. being on campus, not feeling welcome, not feeling like I belonged. That combined with being deferred twice, feeling like SMU kind of took a chance on me, made me that lit a fire under me, and really got me to, sort of where I am today.
Definitely. Definitely. No, it's a good story. It's inspiring. It's because you definitely did. I mean, the story kind of has a happy ending. You did affect some change while you were here. You're part of a pretty big war. Well, we'll talk about that too.
Sure thing.
But let's go to ABS, which you're the president for 2 terms. So what was well, first of all, how did you get involved in ABS?
Oh man, ABS. So ABS came to me actually directly from that night. I wanted to do everything that was black. Anything that was like remotely close to black. Wanted to do that. So I think there was a night at the club was held at Dedman at the rec center, and pretty sure I ran into some people there, and I also got involved with the OMSA. At the time was the OMSA, which I just learned today has been renamed to something else, in alignment with SMU's strategic plan, which is it's a whole nother conversation. But
well, we can have that conversation too.
So a night at the club. Every organization, or most organizations, like student organizations, maybe not Greek organizations, but most student organizations, they go there, set up a table, you learn about the organization. So went there, and I first learned about ABS there. And then I went to what was at the time called the OMSA, right, the Office of Multicultural Student Affairs. And that was the place where black people, brown people, where they came to hang out, where they felt like this is our little corner of the university that we can control, that we can influence, that we belong. And I went there, and that's where literally all the black people hung out. That's where all the Hispanic, Latino people, that's where they hung out, right? All the Latino, or all the lesbian, gay, trans, all those people. Anybody who was just sort of felt different, right? Folks who have maybe been sort of outcast or felt like they were on the fringe of the university. A lot of times that's where I found that they were. So that's where I went, and I ran into, or I learned about ABS, I guess at a more detailed level from two important people. No, there were 3 people, three incredible black women. There was Devin Owens, there's Faith Miller, and there was Briantria, who is now Smocks. So
very cool.
Yeah, they are all. At the time, they were sort of the black women that really drew everything together. I think they saw in me someone, and I don't know if I ever shared that experience with them, but they saw in me someone who was sort of had a hunger to make a difference, who wanted SMU to be better than what it was. So they took me under their wing, and my freshman year, I learned the ins and outs of not only ABS but SMU. So how the university was structured, how it operated, everything from funding cycles to, meetings and different organizations with the president and, executive administrators. So at the time, Dr. Lori White, she was the vice president of student affairs. And she had a council, like the VPSA student council, something like that, right? That's something that you wouldn't really know about unless you knew somebody who was a part of it, or maybe a staff member. They sort of saw you as somebody who wanted to get involved, and you were a leader.
Right. So like you had to be picked out to do it.
Very much so. It was kind of by invitation only kind of deal. Just hanging out with them, they kind of helped me get oriented to SMU and ABS, and helped me figure out the nuances of how SMU worked.
So. The interesting thing that you said, that OMSA felt like, is OMSA, right?
Yeah.
Felt like, something different, I don't remember what. Felt like a place for people who were, unwelcome elsewhere. Like, do you see the isolation of those communities as contributing to, like, the divisions at SMU?
Yeah. Physically, yeah, you can see sort of like that dividing line. So you don't have any other space. I don't think any intentional space that's set aside for black students, right, brown students, other than maybe that pocket. And things may have changed now. It's been 2 years. I've heard a lot of things change in 2 years. But when I was here, I literally can't think other than the Lloyd All Sports Center, where the majority of the black student population is. There is no other place, like an intentional space for black and brown students to congregate, to simply be themselves.
And whose fault? I mean, another idea I wanted to explore is that it's both an institutional problem and a cultural problem, right? It's both in the minds of students and in the structure of the university. So, what do you think is really responsible for that? For that physical division?
Yeah. I think in part it lies in the hands of the university. In large part, the hands of the university. So SMU says, it's funny, I asked this question, and I'll probably say this again in this interview. SMU has a slogan and SMU has a motto. Yeah. Right. So do you know what SMU's slogan is?
World changers, something.
Do you know what SMU's motto is?
I don't remember. No, it isn't.
Oh, it's in Latin.
Oh, I should know that. I'm going to law school. I don't know.
No, it's all good. So it's actually on this ring here. I bring it up and I don't remember it. But it's Veritas liberabi vos. There it is. The truth shall set you free. The truth shall set you free. So I consider that, and I consider the question you just asked. It's like, okay, well, whose fault is it? And it's
if it's anyone's fault.
If it's anyone's fault, and if I am to say that it lies on the part of the university, like where these divisions sort of come from. There has been a stated commitment from the university, right, to become more diverse, to become more inclusive, right? And I think that when we look at, what the slogan is, what the motto is, right, we have to ask ourselves, okay, well, are we being truthful to that, right? To what we say, right? Like we believe in what we say, that we value what we say we uphold. And if one of those things is diversity, if one of those things is inclusion, right, the physical sort of architecture, or the physical, like tangible, like spaces that would align with, or that would serve as evidence to that espoused belief in diversity and inclusion, they would exist, but they don't. So because those spaces don't exist, because they don't, right, we don't see them other than the OMSA, or what was the OMSA, and right, the commitment to sports and athletics, which SMU has no issue supporting. Right, those things don't exist. So I'm like, all right, well, where are they? And that's why I have to first and foremost say, the universities, they've failed us to that extent. Right, there is no intentional space. I remember there being a time when, good Lord, when was it? I think what is now going to be the indoor practice facility, performance complex, whatever, the IPC, right? You can fill in the acronym however you want. There was supposed to be some discussion of, that could be, right, a center for, there was a couple of options. I think it would have been sort of like a welcome center, right? SMU didn't have a true welcome center like other universities do.
That's true.
It could have been like
people just walk into Blanton and look confused.
Right, could have been a welcome center. It could have been a multicultural just sort of center, right? Dedicated to multicultural history, activities, students, a dedicated space, right? An intentional space. And I think it was that space now. And then even, I think after one of the fraternities got kicked off campus. Pike. One of them is like permanent. Maybe it's the
NKA as well.
Sorry, not that. I think the Sigma Chi house, right, which is not occupied by Sigma Chi anymore. I don't think. I think the university bought that property that they. I think that was the case.
The KA house.
Maybe.
Regardless of fraternity house.
Yeah. At least maybe I thought it was. In any case, there was a fraternity house at the time there was a question about what do we do with this, and again there was, hey, we think the university could really benefit from having a welcome center,
having a dedicated, intentional space to promote like inclusion and diversity and celebrate our multicultural students. Yeah, definitely. And they didn't do it, did they? Yeah.
Other things, other priorities. So, university is in large part to blame for that. In large part.
All right. Well, let's move to specifically your battle with the university. Black at SMU, which began, as far as I can tell, in research, in part because of the AEPI Pike Party, with that just horrific ad they did for it, and like, you know, with the guy with the grill and the chain and the sunglasses and everything. Yeah. And did you envision that becoming like the center of a movement, or were you just?
No.
Do you think that was the right issue to spark that conversation?
No, and so that, I guess that issue, that flyer, like that one instance was really just the vehicle to sort of like I guess gain the attention, right? Capture the attention of other folks to say, hey, this is right. There's a larger issue here, but this is literally what we're dealing with. One of many things that we're dealing with. And in fact, I would even say I would go as far as to say that was more of a symptom of a much larger problem. So no, we didn't anticipate that blowing up into what it was or what it ended up being. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I mean, it was necessary. I mean, it had to happen. I had friends who were part of that fraternity, and they, I'll never forget the day. Had a guy text me and say, "Hey man, look, we played basketball together frequently at the time. So hey man, I didn't intend, like this wasn't like this wasn't like the point, like that's not what we intended on doing. Like, hey man."
But you rolled the punches, right?
I mean, not even that. I'm like, hey, look, there are a couple of ways you can go about this, right? You can sort of use this as an opportunity to be a true sort of champion of change and inclusivity and diversity. You can sort of spin it that way. And I know you're a good guy. I know you're an honest guy. I believe that, something that I can support, get behind. Or you can fight this, and that won't go well. And that's the last time we talked. And he tried to fight it, and it didn't go well.
Could you elaborate?
Which part?
How did it not go well?
Oh, I mean, it blew up into what it ended up being.
Yeah,
it blew up. So in my mind, I think there could have been an opportunity to, and we do this weird thing in history, especially as it relates to race, where we identify injustice and then we skip past, that correction. We skip past the opportunity to really deal with the injustice, and we sort of jump into reconciliation and kumbaya moments, right? And
so you felt like there was a missed opportunity for actual change,
right? And the thing is, right, in order for that to happen, right, or at least in order for that to happen between two parties, right, both parties have to come to the table, and that was when I say spin, right, that's what I mean. It could have been, I mean, what happened was wrong. It was bad. We can deal with that, right? And one of the ways we could have dealt with that was, hey, let's come to the table, let's sit down and talk about what happened, why it shouldn't have happened, and then work together, moving in a unified fashion moving forward, and nor did his organization sound interested in doing that. So,
do you mind saying which organization that was?
That was, I think, AEPI. I don't even remember.
That was one of the fraternities.
Yeah, one of the fraternities.
Well,
it was a newer, I think, predominantly Jewish fraternity.
They only have like 12 people.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I say AEPI. I don't know what the A and the E.
But yeah, it's very small.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the other one was Pike, a very large organization, or were a very large organization. And they were just suspended for 4.5 years for things that had nothing to do with racial insensitivity at all. The school got them on forcing their pledges to eat eggs or something,
that's a much... Greek life is interesting here as well. But.
Yeah, it's... well, let's return to ABS for a second. We'll get back to Greek life. So just talking about, really just the incident that sparked the Black at SMU movement. Were those things on the agenda for you as ABS president?
No. And normally when I tell this story, I have to create the division between ABS and Black at SMU. So,
well, they're two completely different things.
And what I find is a lot of people, right, black and white people, folks who were just on the outside looking in, they're like, "Oh, Black at SMU was an ABS thing."
Yeah.
Was not.
Yeah.
No.
He researched it for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's so what was ABS up to before that?
So ABS to that point really was about the business of creating and fostering a community where black students they felt welcome, they felt like they were a part of something, right? So ABS was a student and is a student organization. It's an umbrella organization that has a couple of different sub-organizations underneath it that really allow for black students to sort of find their niche, right, within the larger black community, and really just exist, be themselves, right? So ABS, excuse me, really is twofold. It's twofold. Number one, we want to create and foster a sense of community for black students to be able to come and be themselves, be their authentic selves, to support, to uplift black students. But number two, also, is really just to be a presence on campus for other students, right? Folks who do not identify as black, right? You can come to ABS events, you can come to ABS meetings, you can come to ABS, I went anything.
To a barbecue, had someone
it
was really good.
Right, and it's it's don't allow yourself to be sort of boxed into this perception of what black people or blackness is. Come to ABS and find out. And that was a large part of what we did, right? One of the greatest things that I value about my experience at SMU and being a part of the black community was, I have a large, very diverse, sort of network, of friend network. So black friends, white friends, Hispanic friends, Asian friends, Indian friends, all the like.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, they keep me honest and they keep me sane. So, but within ABS, I had some of those. I had friends who also had a diverse network of people. So what you find is you have black people who don't just hang out with black people, right? We hang out with white people. We hang out with Asian people, folks who don't look like us, folks who don't think like us, folks who don't behave like us. Right? They have different backgrounds, right? They help us become better people, right? By virtue of their experience and us and them sharing their experience with us. So.
Which isn't that a beautiful image?
It is, right? It's beautiful and it's like just so promising and you look at it and it's like, that's what America should be.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Do you feel that most people at SMU have that kind of diverse network?
No.
What do you think the root cause of that is?
I think the root cause of that starts before they get on campus.
Yeah, definitely.
I think another cause of that is sort of speaks to the culture that permeates the place when
How
they
would
get
you
here.
characterize that culture?
I think you used the word insular earlier.
Yeah.
Very much so. I would characterize it as trying to think of the word.
We can come back to it if you want.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It's very, if I had to characterize the culture here, yeah, very very insular, very trying to think of it. There's a word on the tip of my tongue, and I have to say it. It is.
The good news is we can edit anything out of this that you want.
So
it'll be like you thought of it right away.
So there's that piece of it. the word will come to me. But without using a single word to sort of characterize the culture, it was, I think it's just a place where, because it is a predominantly white institution, a lot of things about the place say that if you are white, you can do certain things, and if you are not, you cannot do certain things. And I think there's also from a black student perspective, you sort of get the feel that, all right, well, in addition to my black study, or in addition to like my academic studies and extracurricular things that I want to do, right, there is also this part of me that sort of has to uplift and make other people aware of my presence, my community, my experience. And I don't think that's a burden that other students have to bear.
It's inherently unequal. Yeah.
So there it is. The word just came to mind. Phrase, 2 words, closed-minded. Anyway.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. So very insular, very, very closed-minded, just as a way to sort of characterize the space. Yeah. And I think when I came in, there didn't seem to be a very strong, intentional push to stretch students to think beyond what their perception of things were as it relates to race. So it was like whatever you came in with from a racial perspective, I think the OMSA did as best they could with the resources that they had. I mean, because we had great staff members, we had a great, infrastructure in place, but there's only so much that they can do, and there's only so much time that you have, right, with students. And I think at the time it was like the staff members that were there, they went to PRW, I think once or twice in a given semester to talk to a group of students, which pales.
That was my experience.
Yeah. All right, which pales in comparison to the FaceTime and the attention you get from, say, a Greek organization, who may or may not be reinforcing the correct images, attitudes, things like that.
You feel it's the role? I mean, that's you're right on. This is good. Kind of on the same wavelength here. The real question is so you see that there's really, 2 different communities at SMU. There's the community that the ABS largely speaks to, which, as you say, is diverse, inclusive, place largely consisting of people who are non-Greek, has predominantly white Greek community as well, and so I guess my question is, do you see whose job is it to bridge that gap? Like who needs to take responsibility for solving the problem that you see?
The students.
So not predominantly the administration.
Oh, so it should be a collaborative kind of deal. I don't think that the administration should force one thing or another, but I think it should be a partnership. It should be. I don't think it ever will be.
That's sad. But
I think it should be. It should be a. Yeah, it should be a conversation of sorts where the administration, hey, students, what is it that you need? What do you want from this college experience, right? And that should drive the actions, that should drive the behaviors, sort of the structural functions of the institution, in terms of the community, maybe even the policies, right? As it. I don't know how the legal things. You probably are more familiar with the legal workings of that. But it's whose responsibility is it? I mean, I think that the students they really do sort of. I think they drive those conversations in a sense, and they own that. But I think again, overall, it's the administration. Taking what first of all, listening, right? And let's say it is the administration, setting the table, creating the format, creating the space where students can be open and honest about their experience, and providing feedback, and voicing what changes they think need to be made. starts there. So creating that space, and then the administration, like listening to that, right? Internalizing that, and then being willing to implement the changes, right? So
changes in the mindset of the student body have to like manifest themselves in institutional reform.
Yeah, the institution. I mean, they ultimately kind of have to set the tone. They have to set the tone.
Okay.
Right. So I think whatever they set, right, whatever lead that they sort of make, students will follow or not follow, which is sort of what we did.
Yeah, because it's a question of kind of policing culture, right? It's a thorny issue.
Yeah.
So let's get back to Black at SMU specifically. I've got a couple quotes from you here. I think that something you brought up earlier. You said white people especially, confuse Black at SMU and ABS all the time. And if you don't mind my saying, I kind of mean it as a compliment. Part of the reason for this is that you were kind of the spokesman for both at one time, and that looking into this stuff and the legacy of it 3 years later. There are quotes from you all over the place, and they're pretty good ones. So just read this one to you. So speaking, you were talking about the AEPI Pike thing. You said the parties, quote, "The parties, they're going to happen. The core of this issue goes beyond what an institution can do." So were you saying that we have to resign ourselves to bigotry to some degree?
What was the quote again?
Sorry,
Man,
it
was interesting.
I can barely read my own handwriting.
No,
you said the parties, they're going to happen, and that the core of this issue goes beyond what an institution can do alone. Which seems to be what you just said, that it starts with the students, right?
Yeah.
But do you think that do we have to just let stuff like that happen?
When you say we, do you mean we the students or we?
Oh, I don't know. I kind of wanted to know what you meant.
Yeah. Man, I'm trying to think. So yeah.
If you don't remember, it's fine. They might have misquoted you.
So again, it is the university's responsibility, again, to try to the best of their ability, and that's why they hire all these people, right? Keep their fingers on the pulse of the various pockets and communities of campus, right? So there's that aspect of it. And if they're doing what they're supposed to do, then they're in the know, right? They're aware of what's going on. If there's any unrest, if there's anything out of the ordinary, anything that needs to be corrected, right? They're aware, right? If they're willing and they have the courage to do what is in the best interest of the students, then they'll do that. So they're responsible. But it also falls on, right, in the laps of the students themselves.
Yeah.
So that falls into students who are personally affected by, right, the issues that may be permeating the space, right? So if there's an issue with students who own cats, right, who believe that cats are better than dogs, right, then it's an issue for those students, right? The responsibility falls on those students to say, all right, well, you know what, we want something about our experience here is wrong, so we want the university to be aware of that. We want them to change, right, so that we have a better experience here. So I think it falls in their lap, right? It falls in other people's laps as well, right? Because at some point it sort of reaches out and it touches them too. So one of the funny things that comes out of this is, and this is back when the student media was a thing, rest in love,
yeah,
pour a little water out for them too. Yeah. But you sort of realize that so there's always this chatter about, well, why does this have to be a race thing, right? Why does this have to be a race thing? And it's like, well, that's who I am. That's how I identify, and it's my experience as a race thing, right? As a black person, right? It is my experience. I'm looking through this thing through the lens of a black person because I'm a black person. Yeah. So when I think about, how do I say it? It's my responsibility to be able to voice the change and have the courage to voice the change, right? In spite of what people from our own community maybe don't see or aren't courageous enough to see, or maybe they don't have the same experience and they don't see why we need to stir the water, right? So it's my responsibility to do that, but I think it's also, right, responsibility of folks who maybe don't identify with the Black community, right? Maybe as a Latino person, maybe as a white person, maybe as an Asian or Indian person, right? It's their responsibility as well to say, okay, right, this could be me too, right? This could be me, right? And even if you aren't willing to say that it could be me, right? At the very least, I think it's important to say or to consider, right, this is my campus, and for anyone on my campus to say that they're having, right, a not positive experience, right? If I want to be a proud member of this university, of this institution, right, and I think everybody should be able to have a positive experience, right? So there's a shared responsibility between, right, administration in sort of managing and seeing what the behavior of the institution is, right, and where the students are, what the pulse of the different pockets of campus are, but then the students too, right, and that splits among students who are affected by the various issues, but then even students who aren't, right, who say, yeah, man, that's, maybe I do identify or I don't identify, but this is still my campus and I want everybody to have a good experience too. So there's a split there.
Yeah. So everyone has to be accountable in some way.
Everybody has to be accountable in some way. The reality is everybody's not, because everybody doesn't care. Yeah. So what I've learned in this life is pretty much everything is 80-20, right? Got 20% of the people doing 80% of the work.
Stuff, yeah.
So, or 20% of the people who care, right, care enough to do 80%. And a lot of times it's less than 20, it's more like 95-5. But that's true. But yeah, that responsibility piece is, falls in a lot of areas.
Let's see. So let's move to the demands specifically.
Okay.
First of all, do you think that it was a success? Do you think that it was? I just wrote the acronym SPIVSE. Do you think it was? Do you think it affected the change that you wanted to see?
Putting the document together. There it is. Yeah, we put the stamp on that. There's the motto. Putting the document together was great. It was great. It was
liberating, probably.
Liberating's not the word.
Sorry, or I don't know. But it's about truth, right?
Yeah, it was. It felt good to put it together. It felt good to have something to show for the work. Because I think even going through it, there was a sense of confidence, but there's also, you think I'm a 21, 22-year-old student who's paying to go to school here, right? And even beyond that point, I go back and forth about this as well. It's like, well, keep in mind, right, there were slaves who used to work this place. So this place at no point, right, was not made for me or people who look like me. So to have something like this and to be able to leave it behind says a lot to me. But it also says, as we're going through the process of creating it, I'm like, man, this is, history is not in my favor. This is, right, folks who are on the board of trustees, right, maybe even President Turner, he may not really give a damn about what we're doing down here. So there was always that aspect of it. So I'm definitely proud of the work we did. I think it has affected some change. And I can attribute that to a lot of people. And I mentioned a few names of students who came before me, but a large part of this as well was our advisors, right? So staff members. So I think about Melanie Johnsons of the world, right? The Stephen Johnsons of the world, the Creston Lynches of the world, Jennifer Joneses of the world. List goes on and on. But those are the folks who had FaceTime with us as students, who they cheered us on, right? They were kind of, their hands were a bit tied, right? You're employed by the university, but you also identify with our experience. So there's only so much you can do, right? So you can't, take money from one thing and then also fight that same thing that you just got money for. Is sort of conflict of interest there.
But in terms of people who can move money around, how would you describe President Turner's response to the demands overall? Were you happy with it? Was it?
So I think President Turner did. It's a bit of a loaded question. A lot of people don't. Yeah. Well, it's a loaded question for a different reason. So a lot of people don't realize, and this is one of the key things to understand about President Turner. Presidents everywhere, right? Of universities, they don't sign their own checks, right? So, in large part, right, and I kind of liken this to, and I won't say that. No, it's different. So President Turner is a liaison between the student body, right, and the board of trustees, right. So he's expressing, he's expressing interest to opposite groups, So what's in the best interest of, the university from the board of trustees perspective, right, may not necessarily align with what's in the best interest of the students, right. Or what maybe not align with what's in the best interest of the university from the students' perspective, right? So, Black at SMU may say, or to do that, ABS may say, we think we need to paint Dallas Hall black, right? We can say, and the board of trustees may say, no, that's stupid. We like our Georgian architecture, right? So. Two different things, and that's kind of a crappy example, but
no, I see what you mean. But the President Turner has to balance conflicting interests.
There it is.
The school. Yeah.
There it is. So once I understood that, his responses began to make sense, and he was never too hot or too cold. He was very lukewarm, and I think he understood where we were coming from, but because he didn't sign his own check, right. He has to sort of balance, and this is in part, he has to balance, the interests of the Black student community, the university from the perspective of the board of trustees, but even other communities of students on campus, right, and faculty and staff and so forth. So his response to me, his response to the demands, I think it was at sometimes disappointing. Sometimes a bit vague, sometimes a bit shallow, if I'm being truthful and honest, but I understood. I'm thinking back to examples in some of the meetings that we had. So there was a time when we had standing meetings with the president. I think those meetings still go on to this day, but we had standing meetings with the president, and this was from the presentation of the demands. Up until I guess the point that we graduated, and we would go through. Literally, we'd go through this thing line by line, And he would have a formal response that was drafted, and we would sort of go through and redline it. It's okay, wait, these are things we don't necessarily agree with, things that we could use some clarification about, or things that we flat out no, this is not going to work for us. This is not what we anticipate. This is not what we think is in the best interest of the university from our perspective.
So do you feel like you were negotiating with the administration?
At times it certainly did feel that way. At times it certainly did feel that way.
So what was the product of those negotiations? What did you get out of it?
So I think some of those things were, I'm trying to remember. I think the emotional sort of product was that, hey, we did something really good here, right? Because there were so many different ways that we talked about presenting this. Everything from, running it like a newspaper and just dropping a big stack of them in President Turner's office, or, just taking a copy of these and, slapping them on every door of every fraternity house and every building on campus, right? So many different ways to present. So I think the emotional sort of response or sort of effect afterwards, right, was, wow, we didn't expect to get this far, right? Mm-hmm. So I mean, this is great. Mm-hmm. So that there's that, just the emotional sort of response to that. But then, or the emotional results, I think the other result of it was there was a I think that there were sort of this feeling of and I think this is where the emotions began to surface again of like, this is something that we have to do, right? If we don't do this, no one else will, right? And sometimes it was like a very sobering, like humbling feeling, but it was also a very sometimes like disappointing feeling, like what other students are having to have conversations with the president about this.
Yeah,
right. So that was one of the results. I think there were also some times, right, as some of these negotiations, right, where, kind of being frank, sometimes there are fractions in the black community. You kind of look at, all right, well, what does this segment of the black community want, right? What is this segment, right? What do we think works? And then even beyond the black community, right? There were times when you have other minority communities that are like, well, hey, we want to get in on this too, So, and that's almost kind of like where we had to play like President Turner. We're like, balance interests. There are different things here, who do we represent here? And I think ultimately, this is the black student experience, right? We had to step up to the plate to do what was best for us at the time, and that's what we did. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
it's really. I mean, again, it's just looking at retrospectively, it's an inspiring moment. I'd love if you could talk some more about the process for creating the document, which I didn't really think to ask about before.
No, it's a good question. So this document doesn't even start. It starts with this document.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the effect that the 1969 demands have. Because in some ways they're more extreme than yours were. They were not to characterize yours as extreme, but theirs were more extreme. Like like they demanded 20% black faculty, and you only asked for 10.
Yeah.
And the administration didn't give either of you either one. But it's But what do you think that says? What do you think it represents?
I think it's indicative of the times.
Yeah.
And it could also be, which I'm willing to be honest about it, indicative of the leadership, right? I have a very close relationship with one of the people who actually wrote this document.
Oh, really? Who is it?
Anja Sanders. And she, in fact, this is her name right here. What does this say? Liberal Studies Department. Yeah, these are all notes. Anyway, so yeah, we have I would say a pretty close relationship, and we talk about SMU and the state of the black community pretty often. And one of the things that I learned pretty quickly about her is that, so she was a part of the group that was sort of noted as the 33. I don't know if you're aware of the 33 or not. Yeah. So, when I learned about that, and I learned about that before I learned who she was. So to have heard about like these students, right? I'm just like, man, like they went through hell, like, just to sort of fight for themselves on campus.
Like, it's reminiscent of like the Little Rock Nine.
Yeah. And then to meet her, and I'm like, wait, you were part of that group? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, oh man, like, yo, that took balls, man. Like that's ballsy to do. Like that's crazy. I think there was a difference in leadership. We didn't have to do that. We didn't have to go to those ends, right? We didn't have to go to those means to get right what we want. Maybe we should have. Maybe things would have ended differently, right?
Differently for sure.
Differently, but there was a different kind of leadership that took place back then. I think there was also a different sense of community. And because the racism and the discrimination was so overt at the time, right, it was impossible to say as a black person, pretty much. I mean, I can't say for every black person, but it was pretty much impossible, I think, as a black person to say, I don't feel racism, I don't feel discrimination, right? In the 60s and 70s, I mean, even professional athletes, like nobody was safe, right? Yeah. Nobody was safe. So there was an incentive almost, right? If not for the furthering of your education, if not for your physical protection, right? There was an incentive, right? An inherent incentive, right? Through your experience to fight for this.
Just because the world they lived in. Yeah.
Fast forward to 2016, late 2015 or mid 2015, right? Going into 2016, it's different, right? That's one of the things that I always never quite understood that SMU showed me. And SMU showed me a lot about white people. It showed me a lot about black people too. I think SMU attracts sort of a wide spectrum of students just by nature of how SMU is, right? It's SMU is in a category of its own. It's a small, private, Christian by name only, as I've heard, school,
pretty much.
Right? But I've also heard SMU sort of characterized as like the last conservative haven, Yeah. So all that to say,
there's a spectrum of people. Yeah.
Spectrum of people, and there were like black people that I didn't know. Like I'd only seen the Cosbys on TV, right? I get here and I'm like, wow, like they're actually like black people whose mother and father are like a lawyer and a doctor, and they live in a like mansion, and they drive very nice cars and things like that. So there's that, and then there's also people who, right, like they like came from nothing and are here, right, working literally if like they leave class, go to work, right, sleep 2 hours a night in order to get to what they need to get to. So there's that spectrum, and then me kind of falling somewhat in the middle. Like parents, they're not wealthy, right, but also not like poor, not impoverished. So there's sort of me falling in the middle. And the one thing that just sort of always rubbed me the wrong way, right, that I learned about black people, about like from SMU or through my SMU experience, is this incentive, right? We have to incentivize like blackness to black people. Like I get that. I know what you mean. It's like I get that about like white people. I get that about Hispanic, like Latino people. I get that about folks who are not of the black community, right? In other words, it's like you wouldn't have to explain to like someone from the LGBT community like why it's important to go to LGBT meetings, right? Or you wouldn't have to explain to someone from any other community why it's important, like what the purpose of these meetings are, like what the purpose, right, what the function of this organization is, right? But in my experience, right, being ABS president for 2 years, there's always this fracture between certain pockets of the black community where it's like, man, I have to incentivize you, like I have to like put a carrot out in front of you to get here. So there's not enough, right, inherent to the black experience, right, for you to just come on your own.
That's really interesting.
It is.
That's really one of the most interesting things I've heard in a long time.
Yeah. So it's like,
why do you think that is? I
don't know. I think there is I think there are a couple of reasons. We kind of go back to like that physical divide. Excuse me. So, and I don't know what the numbers or the statistics are on this.
Oh, I have statistics. What do you need?
So, what is the percentage of the incoming class of black students that are athletes versus non-athletes?
Oh, I don't know that one actually. So, sorry.
I don't think it's important to have like the hard numbers. I think, and I would go out on a limb and say the majority of black incoming students are athletes.
Or at least a higher proportion of incoming black students are athletes than any other single group.
By wide margin. By a wide margin. That's what I would say. So understanding that, I think you can look at, okay, well, most of the not just black, most of the athletes are at Lloyd. They go to camp or they go to class. They're at Lloyd for study hall and such. Then they go to their respective training, wherever it is, Crum for basketball and volleyball.
And they're in a different space. It contributes to the physical division that you're...
Exactly. So I think there's that disconnection almost before they get here, right? Because student athletes get to campus before students do, right? So there's that physical sort of the physical disconnection from that sort of pocket of the black community, right? So we missed that. That could be intentional. I don't know. There's that piece of it. There's also like what happens before any of us get here, right? So I'll never forget, I had a conversation with a black girl at the time, and I'm like, hey, I love. So we do this thing, right? And there's sort of a running joke that I had with some of the older black alums, and they would say, man, at the time, like we would see a black student, right? Because literally, like there were only like a handful of black students here, and they would see a black student and like sprint over in the other direction and go be with this person, right? Because they didn't know the next time they would see a black person, literally. So there was a time when, I would sort of do the same thing, right? But I also sort of lean back to my own experience, and I'm like, I don't want anybody to ever feel alone or like they didn't belong. So I would just at random go see a black person, like, oh, hey, what's going on? Like, I want to get to know you, right?
That's pretty cool.
That's what I would do. Yeah. And and sort of in doing that, I would ask, hey, man, it'd be really great to have you at an ABS meeting, right? Or just come by the OMSA, and just hang out, come chill out. And this will be ingrained in my memory forever. I had a black girl tell me, no, you won't see me at the ABS meeting because my parents told me not to self-segregate when I got here. And I kind of didn't know what to say, right? Just same thing we just did. It's just like,
yeah, I mean, what
do you say to that?
It's a lot to unpack. So as parents telling them to self-segregate like that, not to self-segregate. I mean, I don't know. Do you see that as an issue? People voluntarily like isolating themselves from other groups, from people who identify differently?
No, I don't know. I don't think so. No, I don't think so. Well, I mean, that's literally like that. That's what we do, and it's not as rigid as like segregation. Like you can't come over here. Right. It's not as rigid as that. Right. It's like, hey, we want to be ourselves in this space. You're welcome to come, right? Yeah. But understand, like this space has been constructed for us, on our terms. Yeah. So
it's yours. You built it. Yeah.
So, but for me to hear that from a black person, it was just kind of, it shook me in that moment. I'm like, wait. And honestly, I'd never heard the phrase self-segregate before. So I was trying to comprehend. I'm like, how do you unpack that for me? So yeah, we went our separate ways. All right, good to see you, or not see you after that, because you don't want to self-segregate. Cool, fine, wonderful. But it sort of attributes to, or at least to me, it says, there's something about your experience before you got here, something about the way you were raised, the way that you were taught, right? That when you get there, don't be with the black people all the time, right? It's almost as if like there's nothing that you can get from the black community.
Yeah, like there's a taboo of some kind.
It was interesting. Yeah, and again,
that's very strange.
It was the only time. I'm not saying that was a trend or a theme at all.
It was there.
It happened literally one time, but it only took one time for me to think, wow, there's that spectrum again, right? It's like, that was like, oh, that was an outlier that I never saw coming. But I think that sort of goes back to, like where, or, why do we have to incentivize, right? Blackness. It's like, well, there are people who think that if you come to ABS, right, you're self-segregating. It's almost as if identifying with the black community robs you of something else. Like it's like it prevents you from having a full experience, which was interesting to me.
And you think that's unique to Black people, like with regard to their own community?
Because I'm a Black man, and that's my experience.
Or it's the one you can speak
yes.
to.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's the one that I can speak to. I can't say if it happens. I wouldn't be surprised if it does. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it does.
Well, why do you think it happens within your community, or why do people choose to exclude themselves from it? I suppose.
I think that speaks to the culture of SMU, right? Where they feel like either something about the institution or something about the people in the institution, right, won't allow for them to be seen with persons that look like them, or won't allow for them to be their full authentic selves without jeopardizing something else, right? So it's like I can't be with y'all and then also, right, be with other people, right, from other communities, because that may hinder me, that may jeopardize, right, some other opportunity, something else down the line.
How do we fix that? Can we fix it?
We can.
It's reassuring.
We can. And it goes back to the motto for me, right? It goes back to the motto.
Free.
Right. And SMU has to be honest and truthful about, like, what we're dealing with. SMU's never owned up to what we're dealing with. We've never done that, right?
Really?
And I think we a lot of times people liken, issues to like medicine and surgery, and so this is like a perfect opportunity to use this analogy, right? So it's like we have a wound that needs surgery, not a Band-Aid. Needs surgery.
You need stitches, not a whatever your mom sprays on it.
Exactly.
In your knee, right?
No Neosporin and slap a Band-Aid on it, right? No peroxide. You need surgery.
Medical care.
Yeah. Right. But SMU has not done that. There was one thing that I did. This was it was just for the centennial. I had a lot of speaking engagements when I was here. I spoke at a lot of things.
You speak very well.
I do what I can. But thank you. Appreciate that. I think it was at the centennial. Was it at the centennial? It was at the centennial. And right, centennial, you're celebrating the 100 years of SMU. And wrote this speech, which basically was a challenge to SMU, right? And I go back as far as, integration, right, which happened in the theology school in Perkins, and I think I kind of used that as a baseline to speak to, right, where SMU maybe tried to sort of right the ship, but even beyond that point, right there. SMU's had a checkered history, right?
Yeah. So, checkered is a positive way of putting it, I'd say. Yeah.
So I say checkered because there are things are sort of coming in and out, and I can't speak to every single thing from that speech. But the challenge was, right, this being the centennial, right, and we had just hit our $1 billion fundraising effort, right? So we have a $1 billion endowment, right? That's unheard of for a school of our size. Rah!
Hooray for money.
Right. Yeah. The challenge was, would SMU be courageous enough to look in its past and actually own, right, what its motto is and what its slogan is, right?
Actually, you know what? I remember that. I was there. That was, I remember the $1 billion endowment thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. That's really it. It was a question of, right, will SMU be committed? Will SMU be courageous enough to commit to actually, right, owning its motto, right, telling the truth, right, and creating a space where world changers can truly be shaped in this next 100 years? That's the challenge, right? Can SMU do that? Can SMU commit to that?
Do you think we're on a path in that direction?
I can't. I see certain. It's yes and no. It's yes and no. I see things like the cultural intelligence, right, and this sort of movement, and it's a true opportunity, right. But in every opportunity, right, there's implementation, there's execution, you know, and I think all of these the various ideas that sort of come from these opportunities, right, they have to be, I think they have to be pure and in their intent, and they can't be compromised by any one person on the board of trustees, by any group or faction of the board of trustees, right? It has to be, right?
Collaborative or something.
If the intent is to change the campus for the better, then it has to be that, and it can't be compromised for any other thing, right? It has to be that, and I haven't seen that stated like belief, intention from the university. Well, that's not true. Seen, and I think everybody's seen, right? Like every other university is committed to diversity and inclusion, right? It's committed to having an equitable experience for all of its students, right? So that every Mustang is valued, right? Every university, right? We all know that.
Referring to us as Mustangs.
You know, I mean, we all know those talking points. That's cool, fine, and wonderful. But it's the execution of those things, right? The application, right? The implementation. Like how do we do that?
And you feel that's been inadequate, the actual implementation of it? Because I was thinking, I'm glad you brought up. Let's see, cultural intelligence specifically, which they did create cultural intelligence assistant to the provost, basically, who's Dr. Dixon Hall. Do you know her?
Yes.
Yeah, well, what do you think about that? Do you think that was a sufficient response to your demand for cultural training in 2015?
It's a start.
And what stood out to me is it's only two people. You know, it's her and her assistant, and she's in the administration bunker, not speaking directly to the students. So
yeah, it's a start. And having not followed it very closely, honestly, since I graduated. I don't know the ins and outs of it. So I would say it's a start. But again, for me, it goes back to, right, and it's good to hear. You said that there was sounds like a position that was created. I think that's one of the things.
I'm not sure if it was created in response to that. I couldn't figure out.
Got it.
But
yeah,
but it exists.
And that's fair. But let me go back to this for a second. What this really calls for, right, among other things, is for structural changes to be made. Right. The reality is every year you're getting a new group of students and you're losing a group of students.
Yeah.
So something has to persist, right, as you're losing students.
It has to be permanent.
Structural change.
Yeah.
You know. So until something like that happens, and I haven't quite seen, programs are great, right? Programs are great, you know. But the reality is Dr. Dixon Hall won't be here forever, right? President Turner won't be here forever. Clearly, I won't be here forever. You'll be gone in a few years, you know.
Next year,
you know, on the law school, maybe Dedman, maybe not, right? But the reality is, right, people go, right? Institutions, they remain. So there has to be some structural change, right? And clearly, we can look at these and say, well, this was in '69 and this was 16, right? So we're talking 50 years and some change.
Yeah, and it's the same.
So we have to ask ourselves, what structural changes went on then? And if the answer is none, as it probably was, there were no structural changes that were made, then we get what happened in 2015 and 2016. And again, what won't, right? If those structural changes don't come about again, right, then there's going to be another DeMarcus and another John having another conversation, right, in another nondescript room of Dallas Hall, right, with really expensive camera equipment, talking about, wow, they really wrote an awesome document, you know, 75 and 125 years ago, you know. So there has to be a structural change, right? Something's got to give, right, and that involves some power shifting, right. Look at our organizational structure. Let's go look at the board of trustees, right?
I know what you mean.
You know, take a look at that, right? And not just along lines of race. I mean, we look along lines of gender, right? I mean, a bunch of different ways, right, to slice and dice that, right? But when we talk about structural change, That's what's going to persist as the people move in and out. Nothing persisted, right, when in 69, right? They did the best that they could with what they had in the face of great challenge, great difficulty, right? Nothing persisted. They had to leave. They had to go on. Yeah. You know, there was nothing structurally that was in place, right, to allow for what they wanted, right? And let's say that they got what they wanted, right? If there's no structure to support that, we may still be having this conversation today. So
I think you're right.
There's the structural change is really, among other things, that's probably the core here, right? The structural change, right? How can we create the structure? I feel like I'm on repeat.
No, you got it. It's saying that there has to be some sort of permanent institutional shift in the way that SMU deals with like its various communities, and that we haven't done that yet. Yeah.
And before you even get to doing it, right, there has to be SMU doesn't do anything without a press release for the most part.
Yeah.
Right. So there has to be a stated belief, a stated commitment to doing that. It's just a simple fact of it.
Yeah. That's true.
So until that happens, right, there will be another John. There will be another DeMarcus.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I think that's kind of all I have. The only thing else I was going to ask is about young alumni. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but unless there's something else you want to say, that's all my stuff.
No, there are just some important people who I didn't mention, Black at SMU. So the reason we go back to, Black at SMU, before Black at SMU was a thing, actually the reason that Black at SMU was a thing truly is because of a black woman, Layla Gully, proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She will laugh if she sees this and say, thanks to Marcus.
I'll send it to her.
No, she's great. She caught wind of this from someone else in her sorority, and I went to sleep one night, and I woke up the next morning, and this was like literally everywhere. And it had been a full day, and there was a member of the ABS exec board who was an AKA as well, and she's like, hey, this is late. She's like, hey, have y'all seen this flyer? And it was in a group chat. She put it in the group chat, and she says, hey, have y'all seen this flyer? And I think
the A Pike.
Yeah, and this is that flyer, and I look at it, and I'm like, man, this is late. I'm gonna deal with this. It'll be here tomorrow. It will probably be here tomorrow. And I wake up the next morning, and it's just like Facebook, Twitter, it's everywhere. And I'm like, yo, Layla did this. Like, this is wild. And she wasn't, contrary to popular belief, she wasn't an angry black woman. She wasn't a mad black woman. I won't even go as far as to say, using code, she was a passionate black woman. She wasn't that. She was someone who was dogged in her approach, right? She was someone who wanted to see changes made, and there was nothing that was going to separate her from doing that, simply put. So it was from the moment that night, something between that night and the next morning, right? Something like transformed, I believe, in her that was like, you know what, like, this has got to stop. And she had always been a part of movements and things like that in the black community before, but there was something like that happened during that night that like expedited. It was like, this has to happen. And that she really, and her name isn't mentioned enough in this, like she really got things going. She was able to sort of make that initial sort of push, and then the rest of us, we were able to sort of pick it up and run with it. But yeah, like this story isn't, if we're going to tell the story truthfully, like you have to include her name as a part of that.
That's good. That's what this is for.
Yeah.
Oral history is just stories.
Yeah. So yeah, trying to think, are there names on it? I don't know if, remember, I don't think we put. Yeah, we actually didn't
put any names on. It just has concerned members of the Black community.
Yeah. Yeah. So if I have the platform, I'll drop as many names as I can. So Garrett Fisher, this is my good friend. He was, basically a brother. He basically wrote this whole thing. He basically wrote this entire thing. But he's at NYU Law, so
very nice.
Brilliant guy, brilliant guy. He wrote this, and it was a collaborative effort, but a lot of it said he knew all the legal lingo and what to say, how to say it, how not to say it. I'm trying to think, and there were also a number of people. Raina Scruggs rings a bell. Let's see. There was also, I'm trying to think, Kevin Rose, Nick Frazier, Ralphie Burgess. I'm going to say her full name, Lauren Ralphie Burgess. Fantastic artist. And just a number of other people. But those are the names that really stick out. I think Jessica Mitchell is another one too. Jessica did a lot of good work. It took a lot to pull it together. Those are the names that come to mind. Folks who helped us get over the hump. And then one other name that I don't know how I forgot this. After Dr. White left as the Vice President of Student Affairs.
I knew that was going to happen.
Yeah. So after Dr. White left as the Vice President of Student Affairs, there was a woman by the name of Dr. Pamela Anthony, and she played a pretty integral role in helping us get this together as well. Unfortunately, she died of cancer.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, I mean it's part of life, part of our experience. But she played a pretty integral role as well. Another Black woman who helped us as students just understand, how to go about this, right? How to navigate the situation. It's not every day that you have students, right, who are writing demands to administration.
Yeah.
It's
a big event.
Yeah. So there were times we wrote this and we're just like, man, burn the whole damn thing down.
Right.
And it's like
tear down Dallas Hall brick by brick.
And it's we're sitting down talking to Dr. Anthony, and she's like, I just got here. Like, don't burn me, right? But no, she played an integral role in helping us sort of, I guess narrow our focus and really sort of focus on what we wanted to get across. So she played a really, really huge role. And unfortunately, like I said, she died as we were sort of making our way through it. And now Dr. Majay is there. Great guy. I'm trying to think. Man, this is wow. Can I have these?
Of course you can. Yeah.
I haven't seen this in a long time. No, this is honestly this is great. I hope, and this is something that Dr. Waters, I heard him say before, but I hope that I'm 24 now. I hope that in 20 or not that soon, say 30, 35 years, I hope that SMU will be changed enough to where, right, my kids will feel comfortable being students here. I hope. You didn't ask me this, but I'm going to give an answer anyway. Right now, I wouldn't want my child to come to school.
I was going to ask that.
Oh, there it is.
But why? Tell me.
Because SMU is, along with, we can take the United States if we really want to blow it up. But SMU, because I went to school here, has proven to be the university who had the opportunity, who had the resources, who had everything at its disposal to do better, right, to make changes, right, but simply chose not to. And there is something inherently just wrong and unjust and insidious about that unwillingness to do it for the sake of good, right? It's good, right, to be fair. It's good to be just. It's good, right, to correct people, right, when they're doing stupid things like wearing sombreros when they're not supposed to, right? Yeah. Or hanging ponies from trees because, the black organization, had a pony like every other organization does, right? The fact that SMU hasn't chosen to do that, right, and they haven't had any reason not to, right? In fact, they've probably gone in the other direction and swept a lot of things under the rug. But the fact that SMU hasn't shown the willingness, right, that commitment to really changing this place the way that I know and many others know that they can and that they should, the fact that they haven't done that is, for me right now, that's not something that I want my child or honestly any person's child to be a part of. Like, why would you? Why? Yeah. So there's something very, very wrong, very crooked, just insidious about that. Like, why? Right, you have every opportunity, every resource, everything at your disposal, right? And even more, which may be more egregious, is we see those efforts being made in other spaces, right?
They might have less resources and less opportunity.
I mean, we can take athletics, for example. I love football, I love basketball, I love volleyball. I was on the women's practice team. I love sports. Hate the NFL, love sports. Yeah, I had to say that. Right, but I see the commitment. Right? I see at the time, the Miller Event Center. Right, I was a part of the first group of like student ambassadors to kind of work in that space. So basically, whenever they had, right after they opened that event center, they would host different functions and events there. And they'd have students, right? We got paid pretty well, but we got paid to go around and really just sort of interact and engage with donors, alums, right? All kinds of folks. So there's just, again, I use that as an example of there's a vested interest in increasing the profile and even like the profitability, right, of other things, right, on this campus,
Yeah, diversifying in both a business sense and a cultural sense,
And the argument can be made, since the death penalty, right, SMU hasn't been competitive in football. Yeah. Generally, right, there have been sort of instances, right, but generally, last 30 years, SMU's been irrelevant.
Right, yeah. Nobody cares, at the very least. We can't even fill the tiny stadium that we have.
Yet and still, right? We just paid, I don't know how much money for a new party deck, which I'll probably be at some point, right? But it's like there are these investments, right? This vested interest in increasing the profile and profitability, right, of these programs or these spaces or these other things, So I know SMU can do it. I know that the resources are there, right?
But it's just not happening.
They haven't shown the willingness, the commitment, right? There hasn't been a stated commitment. Right, SMU wanted to join the Big 12 at one time, right? So there's a stated, vested right, commitment, right? Yeah. We want to be big time Power 5 in a Power 5 conference, right?
Yeah, they put more energy and money into that. They have into, I don't know. So we talked about on the phone. It was like, just like not funding these organizations, like through Student Senate, that type of thing. Like how easy that would be to do.
Yeah, and it's not so much like the not funding of the organizations. I think it's more.
It's a bad example, but.
Yeah, but they're just. there's just a lot more that could be done in a lot of different ways.
Like what's missing rather than like what's inadequate about what they are doing or something.
Yeah. So that will probably be my parting thought, is that I wouldn't feel comfortable sending my child now. Maybe in the future, right? But now this is for all of the academic prowess, right, that SMU has to offer, right, and the various programs and things of that nature, right? I mean, my academic experience here was, second to none. I truly do believe that. I honestly do. People will call me crazy and irrational. Like, I don't know if I went to Harvard, it would have been any better, right? I don't know that.
I agree with you there. Screw Harvard.
So, but yeah, so it's, my academic experience was great. I think my social experience, right, it could have been better. It certainly could have been better. And I think the university could have done more, right? Should have done more, right? Not just in my time, but in '69.
Yeah.
Right? Could have done more, right? And they had a long time to kind of fix it before I got here. And they chose not to. It boils down to that. They chose not to. It was a conscious willingness, right, to prioritize other things above, right, the interest, the experience of students who look like me, right, and that's what it boils down to, right. They simply chose not to. So
that's a good starting thought. Yeah.
Well,
thank you very much.
Oh, John, thank you, man.